Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of the Arsenal News Show. Join you every morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you as always for making this a part of your morning routines. It is very much appreciated. Do drop a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are indeed new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. Let's jump into the chat box. Good morning to Stephen, Damien, Nate. We've got Olu, Sweating Merlot, Stephen, Martin, Stevie, Paul, Granddaddy Gooner. We've got Jake. We've got Amira, Steve, Kaiser, Penny Ween, Blackshine, Raz, NSW, Johnny, and MJ10, Paul, Carlton, Runs with Cows, Matt G, Vivian, Gary, and plenty more of you guys as well. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Very much appreciate your help and your presence in these shows as well. We're going to get straight on with things today and kick on with our first story, which of course is a look back at yesterday's relegation battles in what has been a very exciting period, I think, at the bottom end of the table. Some really big games involved in the fixture. Of course, we had, first of all, we had Leicester and Fulham playing out an 8-goal thriller in which Fulham ran out 5-3 winners. It wasn't a good day for defences, it's probably fair to say. But Fulham damaging, again, Leicester's hopes of staying in the Premier League. They remain on 30 points, rooted to the 18th place in the table, having played 35 games. What's good about these games is that now everyone down the bottom end of the table has all played 35 matches, making it a lot easier to kind of work out where things are. And Nottingham Forest got a massive victory. It was hard fought, a 4-3, 7-goal thriller in their game, which saw them climb out of the relegation zone and into 16th place on the day, ending the day on 33 points, 3 points clear of those Leicester and Leeds. What I would say is, however, they still do have that significantly poorer goal difference compared to Leicester and Leeds, so they still are nowhere near out of trouble at this moment in time. Southampton, however, look down at this stage. It is going to take a hell of a lot. They're going to need Everton to lose their last 3 games. Southampton are going to have to win their last 3 games and hope that neither of Leicester City or Leeds win any of their last 3 games. That's the problem that Southampton have. Very, very poor season from them. And lastly, Brighton getting humbled by Everton 5-1. We went from an 8-goal thriller to a 7-goal thriller to now a 6-goal thriller. Brighton's hopes of European football took a knock, and Everton's hopes of survival took a massive boost. Not only did they get the win that saw them climb to 17th place, 16th on the day until Forest won, but 32 points now, 21 minus 21 goal difference. That helped them somewhat. It got them 6 goals. Well, they're 6 goals within Leicester City now, but it seems to be a gap that will be considerable still come the end of the season. Goal difference, I think, is what might end up saving a team like Leicester if they're able to get a result. We'll have to wait and see. It's going to go to the last day, I think. It's going to be very, very exciting indeed. Moving forwards, I spoke to Jorginho after the game against Newcastle at St James's Park, and I managed to record it so I can play it to you guys. So sit back, relax, listen. Here's what I had to say with Jorginho after the game on Sunday.
When you obviously came in a few months ago, Thomas Partey was the starter, and now that's 2 successive Premier League starts. So did you foresee yourself getting into the Arsenal team and starting ahead of Thomas in this side so quickly?
I think we are 2 different players that can adapt for the coach in different games. So I think the coach has two good choice in depending on what games and what type of players he wants on the pitch. And the only thing we can do is be ready when he needs us and give our best to help the team.
Thank you. Appreciate that, mate.
Jorginho speaking about his place in the team, considering that he's now started over Thomas Partey in Arsenal's last 2 Premier League matches. And it would take a brave person, I think, to say that he should be dropped for the next game after being arguably one of the matches, or men of the match, I suppose is the right terminology, against Newcastle, along with his fellow midfielders Xhaka and Odegaard. The midfield 3 was absolutely brilliant. And really, we saw, I think, the Italian grow another level with Arsenal, and certainly a greater level of appreciation from fans as well, which was really good to see. Mohamed Elneny has started training outside. He posted on Instagram that he's now running and working outside after that serious knee injury that he suffered that he had to have surgery on. So hopefully we see Elneny back very soon. He should be with the team ready for pre-season. Yeah, I don't expect him to play too many minutes next year, but having him as an option, having him as a depth, having him in the squad, in and around the team is always key. I often see Elneny after the games walking through the mix zones at the Emirates, looking always happy, focused, and certainly a big part of the team we know. So, yeah, good to see Elneny back outside. It's good to have a player available than not. I like to look at it that way. Now, according to John Cross at the Mirror, Bayer Leverkusen are very keen on trying to sign Granit Xhaka in the summer. Arsenal do have the option to extend Xhaka's contract further. It is set to run out, to my understanding, in 2024. After that last extension that took him to 2024, but there is an option for Arsenal to extend it further if they want to. I'm hoping that Arsenal still keep hold of Granit Xhaka. I don't buy into this whole rhetoric of replacing Xhaka. For me, we need to upgrade on Xhaka, not replace Xhaka. I think that that's the way forwards for this club, is you keep your best players and you bring in players to reinforce the existing quality that you have. I think before, we lingered too long on the idea of replacing players in the team. And no, you keep your best players and you reinforce them with competitive options that are arguably an upgrade on them so that you've got an even better squad for next season. But Bayer Leverkusen said to be very interested in our midfielder. Moving further away and on to incomings, Arsenal, according to media in France, are said to have an interest in Montpellier's forward Elye Wahi. Now, I don't know much about the player. All I know is that we've been linked with him previously. We were linked with him around the January transfer window. He's had an excellent season for Montpellier. He's only 20 years of age, 17 goals so far this season. Can play both through the middle and on the right-hand side. He's got 5 assists on top of those 17 goals. The problem I have with this deal in particular is, say, the point in signing Wahi when you've got like Balogun, who has scored more goals than what he has in France. And I guess the only way to make that make sense is that Balogun is keen on leaving and keen on moving on and being a starting option. Now, if Wahi is more interested in signing for Arsenal and being a competitive option and making that step up to that club, that's, I guess, how it makes sense. And perhaps that's how you create the logic around why we would sign him and let go of Balogun, for instance. But he is a very talented player and certainly one that's on the radars of a lot of top clubs across not only in France and England, but across the continent as well. So he's certainly one to keep an eye on. Now, West Ham are said to be looking, according to Sky Sports, for around 120 million from a Champions League club to allow Declan Rice to leave in the summer. However, they would accept a lower figure if they can get a player in return. Whether Arsenal can offer a player they'd be interested in, if that's someone like Sambi Lokonga, I don't know. I doubt it. I feel as though, and I have spoken about this with a couple of friends of mine, I feel as though this story in particular, it feels like a bit of a club-sided leak about a price tag, if it is indeed true. It's certainly not one, I think, that would come from the players' side of things. I feel like it's something that would come more so from the club side of things. They would leak a price tag. They want to try to drum up interest. They also want to try to set their post in the sand, if you will, around the figure that they would be looking to get. I've always maintained that I think Arsenal would be able to get Rice for below that £100 million figure. I'm hopeful that that would still be the case. He's not going to be cheap, don't get me wrong, but I would hope that Arsenal get somewhere between 70 to 80 million. That's what I'd be looking at. I would be a little bit reluctant to go above £80 million, to be honest, for Declan Rice. If Arsenal ended up spending 100 million and getting him, of course, I'm not necessarily going to complain too much because I think he's a brilliant player that would add a hell of a lot of quality into the Arsenal team. But to pay upwards of 70 to even 80 million pounds, I just think is an extortionate amount, especially considering the amount of time left remaining on his contract. Interestingly, also reported by David Ornstein in The Athletic, is that West Ham apparently are appreciative of former Arsenal midfielder Matteo Guendouzi as being Rice's replacement for next season. It does not seem that would be the right player to bring in, neither at the level of quality nor even necessarily the right role in the side. However, if that interest is indeed true, and there's very little to suggest that David Ornstein would not be accurate in reporting this story, it would be interesting to see Matteo Guendouzi come back to the Premier League. I think we can all agree that Arsenal have upgraded their midfield significantly and made the right decision in allowing Matteo Guendouzi to leave. Now, you need to make the right decision when it comes to providing yourself with the best VPN service. And I am very thankful to be here to tell you that if by using NordVPN, you can guarantee yourself getting a top quality service, which does all of the things that you would love from a VPN. Not only that, but by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner, you can get yourself a significant discount off the service as well. Very look forward to seeing plenty of you come back to me telling me how much you enjoy using NordVPN, how much you enjoy our transitions on the show as well. But yeah, you can change your geolocation on your phone, your tablet, on your laptop. If you want to watch a program that's not necessarily available in the country of origin that you're based in, just use the app of NordVPN. Change your location digitally on any device that you wish to use that I've named, and it'll do that for you. Not only that, but it keeps you safe and secure online, keeps those pesky little trackers away. You can get even more information about what NordVPN can bring you on the website. So make sure that you go and do that. We've got a brand new prize to tell you about as well. The Dennis Bergkamp prize has now gone. It is over, I'm afraid to tell you, but there is a brand new prize for you to get involved with that I should have definitely thrown a picture on before I started the show. But there it is. It is a signed Thierry Henry Arsenal shirt. That is the prize now for the next week. And for the early birders amongst you, you can get a cheaper discounted price on your tickets as well. But you're going to have to be quick to get hold of that cheaper price. So make sure you hop onto the website as soon as possible. If not, it's going to rise as well. But there are 299 tickets available for this price, which includes it's not only framed, but in a custom mount, which includes a small television screen playing some of Thierry Henry's best moments. A great piece to have hung on your wall to impress your friends and your Arsenal supporting pals if they do indeed come round. But not only that, but just by entering the competition, you can get yourself involved in all of the instant win prizes involved in this, which also includes a Tony Adams signed and custom framed Arsenal home shirt, a £25 Arsenal Club Shop voucher, there's 2 of those, and plenty of football prizes, site credit as well. So don't miss out. Try and get a ticket, get involved, link down, UK only. Okay, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Now, you can still get hold of our merchandise as well. Our TGT caps helped raise around £1,500 last month for the Arsenal Visions fundraiser to go to the Arsenal Foundation. I'm very happy to also announce that across the first quarter that we have been going for these hats, we've also raised over £500 for Cancer Macmillan support as well. So thank you to everybody that has continued to support the merchandise. We'll be making that donation today, and I look forward to sending that in. We've, of course, already donated that £1,500 straight to the Arsenal Foundation, which is fantastic to see. Yeah, very, very proud of everything that's happened here at the channel and what we've been able to do. And you can support yourselves not only a red, gold, or grey TGT cap, but the USA version as well that I've got on my head right now. So go to the TGT store and get yourself one of those and help some great causes. Non-profit, none of that money goes to me. It just goes to the local business that help embroider the hats for me. And of course, the Arsenal Foundation and Cancer Macmillan support get the help as well. Right, let's go to the chat box then and tackle some of your questions. Peony Ween says, if we fall short by 3 points, is there a particular game or incident that you would point to very strongly that cost us the most? Yeah, I would. I don't think you could point to one game because 3 points would not be enough. If you're 3 points away from City, the likelihood is that they've also got goal difference. So it's kind of like 3.5 points. So I think you have to kind of point to 2 games. I think we're obviously going to look to Southampton and West Ham as 2 games where we shouldn't have dropped points. We could have gone 3-1 up if it was Xhaka that scored that penalty. We shouldn't have made the mistakes that we did in the Southampton game that led us to just kick off that match, basically a goal behind and then 2 behind. And I can't not talk about the Brentford game. You know, the Brentford game, which ultimately we were robbed of 3 points because of a VAR mistake. That will come back to haunt us. I look back at the VAR error against Manchester United that wrongly ruled out Gabriel Martinelli's goal that would have given us a 1-0 lead there as well. I can't help but not look back at the Southampton away game. The away game where they should have had so many players booked and potentially sent off. And not only that, but Gabriel Jesus should have had a penalty as well. I also look at the Newcastle home game when Dan Burn rightly should have been absolutely penalised for basically tearing Gabriel Magalhaes' shirt off inside the Newcastle box and wasn't. There's been a number of things that have gone against us. There's been mistakes that have happened in our control and mistakes that have happened outside of our control. And it's a real shame. I think the biggest thing that I point to and the incident that I point to, though, most of all, is William Saliba's injury. I feel as though if we'd had William Saliba in this team for the course of the whole season, then maybe we would have picked up a few more points. That, for me, is the big thing about this campaign that I will be so gutted about, because just losing, no matter whatever backups you've got, losing a player as good as Saliba is always going to cause a significant problem in your team. Penny, we've all done that. Matt G says, Tom, when we end up selling Nuno Tavares for 40 million, how silly will I feel? Hey, look, I'm not going to feel too silly, because if anyone should feel silly, Matt, it's the team that pay £40 million. So whoever happens, I'll be the second silliest person in that situation. Rahil says, hey, Tom, who would you take if we didn't get Moussa Diaby and you went for a cheaper option? Zaha, Pulisic, Ziyech, or Asensio? Diaby obviously is someone who plays on the right and left, but he plays more so, I think, now on the right. Zaha, Pulisic are more left-sided players. Ziyech, Asensio are right-sided players. I think I'd choose Asensio of the four. A, because I'm biased, because I love the guy. And B, because I think Pulisic and Ziyech, we've seen what they're about in the Premier League, and I'm not sure they're at the level required. Zaha, I would only go to if indeed it was like the last option, because he's a free, so it makes sense, but his age profile's wrong for me. And Asensio, there's something about Asensio that I think if you're able to revive the quality of player that he is, you've got a hell of a talent there still. Hasn't been able to necessarily revived that after the serious knee injury picked up, but he's managed to stay fit, just not get into that team over the likes of Rodrigo, Valverde. He's got some significant players ahead of him, to be fair, in that Real Madrid squad. So I would still be interested in seeing what Asensio could do in the Premier League. I could somehow see him at Liverpool for me. I think that's where I think he'll end up one day. Maybe Newcastle, who knows? Girish says, Tom, if Southampton go down, would you be keen to loot them of any of their key players? Livramento, who, of course, we've barely seen, because he had that serious knee injury. How much has he even played? Livramento. Let's have a quick look. How much has he played this season? He played no games so far. When was the PL2 game that he played? He played it on the 14th of April and didn't play against the next game. Has not been involved at all year. It's very difficult to know how he might come back, Livramento, but Arsenal were very keen on him prior to that injury that he suffered. So what a terrible fate has befallen him, unfortunately. Lavia, definitely, though. Lavia is someone I'm very, very keen to see arrive at Arsenal. Lynn says, wouldn't you be a little wary of buying a player who is playing in an average team? And like Grealish, could he struggle because he isn't such a standout player at a bigger club? I think Grealish, obviously, this season has had a much improved campaign based upon what he provided last season. But I absolutely have empathy for your point of view, Lynn, on this. And yes, I am wary of that. That's why I'm a bit wary of Ivan Toney, for instance, because I think he stars in that Brentford team. I don't know how well it would transition if he was to move to an Arsenal or to a Chelsea, or, somewhere where he's not going to be the star man anymore, among stars, if you will. Sometimes I think it's easy to go, well, if he's doing it at Brentford, imagine what he could do at Arsenal. But in reality, that doesn't necessarily happen. You think about Danny Ings, you think about Ricky Lambert, when he moved to Liverpool. You don't necessarily see that immediate improvement that you thought you would just because they're playing in a better team. The whole better team argument doesn't always work for players. Vincent says, good morning, Tom. 120 million could get us Dusan Vlahovic and Caicedo. I don't think it would, mate. The midfield right-back cover, not just one player. Centre-back Diaby, 200 million budget, strengthen the core. Again, look, that's what I wouldn't go to 120 million for Rice. I think you could go and get Caicedo for less than 120 million, probably around the 70 to 80 million pound figure that we've discussed before, and go and you get yourself something else too. Like Rice for 120 or Caicedo for 80, I'm getting Caicedo over the two. I think I'd invest that 40 million extra into somebody else that could really strengthen the midfield or the forward line or the defence. I think that's what I would do with that type of money. It's just not for me. A lot of people suggesting what games they look to. Lynn says Brentford and Man United. Mark says Brentford and Southampton. Runswick House says that 1 point from the Southampton games. 2 points across both games. Very, very frustrating. Usual says should have, would have, could have. And that's what I've been saying for a long time, Usual Suspect. You're absolutely right. You can't necessarily look back and go, we should have done this. I did a big thread yesterday and I got into a lot of debates on Twitter yesterday about Jakub Kiwior's inclusion, and I think that Usual Suspect is absolutely right in this. You can't go back on the shoulda, woulda, coulda stuff, because at the end of the day, we are in control of our own destiny to the most degree. And I don't look back and go, well, Kiwior should have been brought in earlier. I just don't look at it that way. I've written a piece about it this morning. You can read all my thoughts on that, so I'm not going to repeat them here. If you want to hear my thoughts on that one, you can read it on Football London with that piece that came out in the AM. Kurt says, Tony is class. Stop it, Tom. It's just not for me, mate. Tony's not for me. Outside of football, those issues I'm not keen on. Not only just the allegations of the betting, but the attitude as well I have an issue with, and I just don't think the age profile is what Arsenal should be looking to go for with Tony. It's just not my bag, I'm afraid. So yes. Mickey says, Tom, what do you think of Zubimendi? Arsenal seems keen. Would he be a better option to Caicedo? He's a very different player to Caicedo. He's much more kind of your number 6, sit in, sweep the back four, cover the back four. Caicedo a lot more expressive. Also, what do you think of Orkun Kokchu as an 8 beside Odegaard or Sutelo as a centre-back? Don't know much about Sutelo. Apparently, we've got an interest. I don't know that myself, but that's what's been reported. Don't know much about him at all. Orkun Kokchu has been a player that's been linked with Arsenal for a while. At least 3-ish years has been linked and has continued to remain with Feyenoord. So is this the time where he makes the move? Is the time he makes that step up from the Eredivisie? Not sure. Is he good enough for Arsenal? I think there are better options out there, to be honest. Georgios says, just read this morning that Spurs might not sign Dejan Kulusevski if they miss out on top 4. He is a huge Arsenal fan. Would you use him as competition for Saka? I would be interested in signing Dejan Kulusevski. I think he has shown at Spurs in what is, let's be real, a limited team, a restricted team, what he's capable of. Has he had the best season this year? No. Have Spurs had the best season this year? No. I think that's a big part of it. I think we saw last season what he's capable of when he signed for that 6-month loan period. I suppose it was an 18-month loan period in January. Thought he was very good. Maybe he's someone that could come in and provide some good competition for Saka. I never used to really rate the guy. He's changed my opinion on him and certainly improved in my mind as well. Knowledge says Kiwior was ready to come in and start earlier. Just for me, no. Sorry, he corrects himself. Wasn't ready to come in earlier and start. I mean, all we need to do is look at the game against Sporting. Look at the substitute appearance against Liverpool. I don't blame Arteta for not bringing him in earlier. For me, when you look at the West Ham game, you look at the Southampton game, was the bigger reason that we dropped points because Saka didn't score his penalty and because Ramsdale made that pass out at the start? Or was it the presence of Rob Holding in those two games? For me, it's much more weighted towards the missed penalty. If Saka scores that penalty, I think we win that game. We're not talking about Holding at all. I think if we don't make that mistake at the start of the game against Southampton, we don't go 2-0 down, we probably go on to win that game. So I don't look at the presence of Holding as the main key contributor to dropped points against Southampton and West Ham over those 2 key moments in those games. Penny Wayne says, shoulda, woulda, coulda. The like button. Yes, just make sure you press that like button. And thank you for the donation, mate. Much appreciate it. Let's go to Kurt. Says people forget Holding was solid when he first came in. And when was the last time we were 2-0 up at Anfield? Yeah, I know. And I think also that, we were 3-1 up. We would have gone 3-1 up against West Ham. And we were 3-1 up against both Leeds and Crystal Palace and went on to win that game 4-1 in both instances with Holding in the team. I would have backed us to go on and win that game by even more if we'd have gone 3-1 up against West Ham. I think it's really easy to just kind of point the finger at Arteta and say, should have brought in Kivior sooner, should have not persisted with Holding for as long as we did. Look, could we have been better with Kivior in there based upon the last 2 games? You'd be an idiot to say that there's not a chance that we may have been better if Kivior was playing instead of Holding. But to point the finger, at Arteta for not bringing him in earlier, I just think is very harsh considering what we'd seen from Kivior so far, and especially considering the moments in the games that Holding was involved in that we dropped points in. And when did you say you throw him in? You throw him in against Southampton? I mean, as I said before, I don't think Holding's behind why we dropped points at West Ham. You look at the goals that we conceded, they don't come from an influence of Holding, in my opinion, that's great enough to point the finger towards him. And you look at the game against Southampton, again, I don't look at Holding. I just can't point the finger there. We had the chances, we made the mistakes, and I don't think necessarily Kivior changes things so dramatically that you then point the finger at Arteta for not starting him sooner. Let's go to Philip says, is it time to rest Zinchenko and Saka? I don't want to say that they've been poor, but definitely think their high standards have dropped over the last few games. I really find the Saka one a bit strange. Saka in the last 2 games, I've really liked his performance. And I think that there's almost like this whole thing of if he doesn't score or doesn't get an assist, he doesn't stand out enough for people. I think against Chelsea, he was really dangerous, lightning quick, always a threat in behind. I think against Newcastle, he was a great outlet. Should have scored. The one-on-one opportunity he had, it absolutely should have scored. But for me, you can't ignore what Saka brings to the side. He doesn't look tired anymore. Zinchenko, on the other hand, there are question marks for sure, about defensively what Zinchenko is. But also, look at the Chelsea game. Look at the Newcastle game. Look at the way in which we created chances. And look at the amount of times Zinchenko is involved in the build-up when we go to create those chances. Take Zinchenko away and you don't have that same influence. Tini can do some great stuff going forwards, but he doesn't do what Zinchenko does. And I do think that there is so much I think there isn't a hyperbole, if you like, of criticism towards Zinchenko. Sure, not defensively. That is always going to be the trade-off with Zinchenko. You're going to get near world-class levels of progression and influence in your forward line with Zinchenko in the team, but you're going to get some deficiencies and vulnerabilities defensively. I think the trade-off is worth it. I think it's worth having Zinchenko in. I think one of the reasons why we beat Newcastle because of the presence of Zinchenko was there. So it's very, very difficult. Very difficult indeed. Samia says, Tom, who can be our Akanji next season? Played centre-back, right-back, pushed to handle Saka as a left-back when Ake was injured, did everything immaculately. Who are the players that we can target? Well, I mean, Tomiyasu, for me, Samia, is an existing presence that can already do that. We just need him to stay fit. That's the key thing, We need him to stay as fit as possible. Having been recommended to me, I can't remember who it was that recommended it to me, but certainly is worth the credit if I could remember their name. But Gestruda, the Feyenoord defender, is certainly someone that I've been, after watching a few of his matches now and looking back over some individual moments through Wisecout, is a player that's definitely impressed me. I'm always kind of wary at the end of seasons because what happens is you get kind of team of the season for different leagues come out. And then obviously that kind of brings names into the focus of different people that they didn't previously have, and they're basing it off of that fact. But looking back, there's a good reason why Gestruda was someone that was brought into that team of the season and has had a really, really good season for Feyenoord, and I think will probably get snapped up by somebody in the summer. Let's go to Mark. Says the Bowen goal was Holding's fault. Gabriel called everyone forward. Tierney went up, but Holding did not move up. I'm pretty sure that White Mark was alongside Holding, was he not? In that moment, Holding was definitely slow to get up, but I'm pretty sure that White was next to him. But it's interesting how White isn't mentioned. It's because Holding's the easy target, isn't it? Like, it's not White and Holding were too slow. It's just Holding. Yeah, it's a shame. Amira says, we're all saying who could have been with Kivior because of holding, but what about Jorginho? He's given us control these past 2 games and even off the ball, even off the bench against West Ham when Partey has been off as well. Yeah, I think that's what I've seen a lot of is people kind of justifying Partey's poor form in relation to Holding's presence being there. But, I don't necessarily, I think that's really unfair. I think Partey in possession has not been as good. He's given the ball away in too many situations, which never had an influence of Holding involved into it. So, if you're going to be critical, you've got to be objective with it. You can't not be objective. The amount of times I've had debates with people now where objective thought has just been abandoned completely because the argument, the debate being right becomes far too important to people. So they start just ignoring facts. How many times have we been sitting on this channel and sitting here and I've held my hands up and gone, you know what, guys, I was wrong. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about Emi Buendia. Very, very wrong. Thankfully, I always wanted Martin Odegaard from the start, but it looked like he wasn't going to be able to be gettable that summer. So when we switched to Emi Buendia, I was on the Emi Buendia train. And I was very wrong about that. So you've got to be able to just be magnanimous enough to say, you know what, this person's made some good points and has changed my mind. And sometimes I don't think you can ever change someone's mind. I think you can only ever question them into a place where they change it for them. But when you ask questions that get predictable answers that just ignore facts, that's when you know that a debate is probably not worth having. That's... I'm trying to give you an example. There was a conversation yesterday. Am I going to call someone out by doing this? Probably. What was the discussion I had yesterday? So the discussion yesterday was obviously around the Kivior situation. Matt on Twitter said, I think the team lacked confidence with Holding. Those mistakes maybe don't happen if we bounce back better in those games without him there. I said, obviously, do you think we beat West Ham if Saka scores the penalty? And Matt says, not sure. But I don't think West Ham get 2 goals if we're able to play our game. To which I said, I don't think that's entirely the truth, considering that we went 3-1 up against both Leeds and Crystal Palace with Holding in those teams, and we won 4-1. To which the response was they're both at home against lesser opponents. And I'm like, I just can't. There's only so much that you can talk about and discuss before you realize that it doesn't matter what you say. Nothing's being absorbed. Nothing's being, what's the word I'm looking for? Registered. So that's what I would say. If you're ever having your debates on social media, I think you have to recognize a point where the person you're debating with, it doesn't matter what you say, they're ignoring all the facts of the situation and creating narrative or context that is skewed and bent towards what is not the reality of the situation. James says, when Partey plays, Xhaka plays higher. When Partey has sometimes to take risks. When Jorginho plays, Xhaka stays closer, making riskier passes less frequent. I'd be intrigued to know. I mean, is there any evidence, James, to back that up? Do we have Xhaka's average positioning of the last 2 games when Jorginho started compared to Partey? Do remember, of course, that when Partey's played, we played against some sides like Southampton, sides like West Ham. But I don't know if that's necessarily true. It just seems like something that would be said because you just think Jorginho being less athletic or less risky with his play, that means Xhaka is closer. But I think Xhaka has been still pretty far forwards. I mean, did he not get both assists for Odegaard against Chelsea when Jorginho was playing? So I don't necessarily think, James, please do send me the average position. I'd love to see it. He says average position shows it. Please send it to me. I would love to see it. Try to send it to me before tomorrow morning's show if you can. Knowledge says, I don't mind Holding. He's not the greatest, but he's okay in a pinch. Look, categorically, no one said that we need to upgrade our 4th choice right centre-back. I didn't see a single person. I saw people saying that Kivior should come in. I'm not going to sit here and say no one said Kivior should come in earlier, because people did say that. But no one said that we should be getting a better 4th choice right-sided centre-back ever. Everyone was saying we need to replace Holding whenever. That's fine, But we were doing that because we brought in White. And then we integrated Saliba and we brought Tomiyasu, and then we created a situation where you've got 3 players who can all play and should play ahead of Holding. But when you lose Saliba and Tomiyasu at exactly the same time, in exactly the same game, That's going to create havoc so that you're going to have to, unfortunately, use your fourth choice option. And you're going to see a dip because guess what? He's not as good as Saliba. He's nowhere near as good as Saliba. So you're going to see a drop. And to that point, the only thing that we'd seen of Kivior was a substitute appearance against Liverpool that wasn't good, a substitute appearance against Crystal Palace that was okay, and a start against Sporting that was terrible. So it was very difficult to kind of justify bringing in Kivior into a position that he's played 230 minutes at Spezia across 5 games that doesn't give you an indication that necessarily it's going to be a success, because I think Spezia won one of those games and didn't keep a clean sheet in any of them. So I struggle with that. I really struggle with that argument around the Kivior thing. So Nicholas says, Tom, we should get a better fourth choice right centre-back. There, now you've seen someone say it. And I don't mind that you've said it now, Nicholas, because look, I'm all for moving on Holding in the summer. This is not coming from someone that thinks Holding should be here next season. Holding should be moved on. We should bring in another right-sided centre-back and add even better options to the defence. I'm not saying he should stay. All I'm saying is that no one was saying before this season or in January that we needed a better fourth choice right-sided centre-back. No one said it. So I'm not going to begrudge Mikel Arteta for making the decision to bring in our fourth choice centre-back when 1, 2, 3 didn't work. And then after a few games, I think it was 6, he's recognised that he's got a team like Chelsea coming up. Oh, they're not very good. Maybe let's try something else just to see if it works. We couldn't do that against City. I don't think we can necessarily do that against Southampton. And we didn't expect to see what happened at the start of that Southampton game happen, So, yeah, for me, it's just not a fair argument to start pointing fingers at Mikel Arteta for the Kivior hindsight argument. It just doesn't stack up for me. But at the same time, when I've said that, the amount of people that have responded on social media and said, we're worse with Holding, we're better with Kivior. And I'm like, I've not said for 1 second that that's not the case. I've not said in anything that I don't think that Kivior has improved things. But as I did tweet yesterday, Twitter has unfortunately become about people inaccurately filling in the gaps of the things that you say rather than asking questions to see what the gaps are actually filled by. But that's social media in 2023, I guess. Dale says, let's just all agree Holding cannot be on the team next season and leave it at that. I think that's probably a great place to end that discussion. I don't think it will end the discussion, Dale, but I think that's the right place to all come to an agreement, is that we need to replace him in the summer. It's as simple as that. Lynn says, I'm not defending Holding. However, Rambo should be guiding Holding as to where he wants him to be. But you rarely see this with Ramsdale. Look, I'm not going to be on the side of criticising Ramsdale at the moment. I did enough of that on Sophie's show, to which I didn't even criticise him. I just said that I think if we can get better, who's to say that we shouldn't be ruthless and go and get a better player if one's available? I'd never be against upgrading on anyone if you can find an upgrade. But let's be honest, Ramsdale's been blooming brilliant. Let's go to Mickey says, as an entirely different striker option, which could be a very valuable plan B, considering Champions League next season, would you take a Højlund over Vlahovic? It's not what other type of option would you go for? Højlund is obviously a very exciting young player coming through and playing a lot. I say not coming through at Atalanta. He's kind of just been there this season, has obviously moved from Austria, where he's done very well in Italy now. I would take him. I think he's a very exciting young forward that I would sign. Vlahovic, I think the ship has kind of sailed at this point. I also think there's plan B. I'm not sure that you could sign him and say to him, you're going to be the plan B for us next year. But I do, and I would like us to see someone a little bit more physical, a little bit more varied, in what ultimately we can bring and see in the team. That's what's key to me. Let's go to Wilson says, do you think Arteta should have started Kivior early in previous game? Why did I click on this question? We've just discussed this, Wilson. Do rewind, and we've got it all. I'm hoping that you're just trying to take the mic. We've just discussed it. Alex says, we need someone like Holding who obeys and stays on the bench and comes on when needed. I think ultimately bringing in someone that competes with Saliba is what you do. You don't replace Holding. You get rid of Holding with the utmost of respect. You tell him to, as Sophie would say, you tell him to jog on, and then you bring in someone that you think can compete with Saliba, like, bringing in someone like a Mark Gahey, for instance, from Crystal Palace, bringing a competitive option that means that the level does not drop when Saliba is not there or when you're going to rotate. You know, that's what we need to do. Nicholas says, can we stop and just laugh at the goal that De Gea let in over the weekend? Always. It's brilliant. It's hilarious. I watched it in where was I? I was still in the press lounge actually after the game when it happened, and I finished watching the West Ham game in a pub in Newcastle where I was finishing off some work, and it was great. You know, it was fantastic. West Ham, by the way, have turned things around from there. They were in a bit of danger, but they've had some really good results. It's a shame that I don't think they weren't able to use their full strength team against City. City got a bit fortunate there, I think, with the illness, unfortunately, that hit West Ham. Yeah, that's a shame, and not one that we can linger on, I don't think. Akash says, should we be moving on from Partey? Is he one that should be sold this summer? I don't subscribe to this. You know, based on what we've seen on the pitch, Thomas Partey has been one of the most important players that we've had during this season. And if we can find somebody better than Partey, A, that's going to cost you a hell of a lot of money. And B, why should we then be in the same position that we was when we had Partey? In the sense that if you replace Partey, you sell him and you bring a Rice or a Caicedo in. If Caicedo or Rice gets injured, you're in the exact same position because you've not strengthened, you've just replaced. People need to stop using the word replace and start using the word reinforce instead, because it's just like the whole backup competitor thing. Stop using the word backup, start using the word competitor. You know, don't replace, reinforce. That's how you build a strong squad with a lot of strength in depth. That's how it works. You don't replace, you reinforce. That's kind of how you do it. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I'm going to end things there. I'll be live on the Arsenal Way. I know I've been saying that a while and it's not happened, but today we should be. I'm nearly certain to say we will be live on the Arsenal Way in just over an hour and 15 minutes time. So do join us over there in that amount of time. Drop a like here. Really appreciate your time as always. Really appreciate everything that you do in terms of turning up, in terms of dropping in. There's over 700 of you watching this morning, which is great. You know, I know we've had a bit of a quiet spell. With it being kind of a bit hectic and the form not being as good. But I know that when we ramp up to the transfer window, I know a lot of people return to the channel, which is always great to see. And we welcome you back with open arms. So thank you so much for doing so. We'll be back to over 1,000 listeners on the morning show, I'm sure, very soon. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Do drop a like on the video. Do subscribe if you're new. And as always, up the Arsenal.